Hello, hello, hello. This is Dr. Janice Love, also known as the First Lady Coach. And today in this video, we are going to be talking about how to gain confidence even when you don't feel competent. Have you ever been in a situation where you just did not feel you were competent, so it caused your confidence to dwindle to nothing? Well, stay tuned because I'm going to give you 3 ways that you can gain confidence even when you don't feel competent. All right. Hello and welcome back. I am Dr. Janice Love, also known as the First Lady Coach, and I equip seasoned pastors' wives and Christian women to have the clarity, the confidence, and the courage to walk boldly into the destiny for which she was chosen by being perfectly who God created her to be. All right, so here we are tonight. We are talking about 3 ways to gain confidence even when you don't feel very confident. Have you ever been in a situation where you talked yourself out of doing something because you didn't feel like you could do it? How many of you have ever applied for a job and then again looked at the list of requirements and then talked yourself out of applying and decided, nah, that's not me? How many of you have ever submitted your name for an award? We never tend to submit our own names for an award. Usually, we will recommend somebody else for an award. Or how often have we been asked to do something and then look to see how somebody else did it? Okay. And then determine whether or not we were capable of doing at least a half a good job as she did. Or how often does your confidence wane when you start checking off boxes of any time? Like again, maybe you were thinking about applying for a job and you looked at the job description. You started checking off boxes about what you were qualified to do. And because you couldn't check all of them, you were like, I don't have the confidence to go ahead and apply for it. But in a book called The Confidence Code, hopefully you've read that book before, it talks about the fact that maybe a man will look at a job description and maybe he only has 20% of the qualifications, but he will go ahead and apply for it because he's convinced that he is competent and can do it. However, a woman will have to check off all of the boxes in order for her to go ahead and apply for that position. But we're not necessarily talking about jobs today, but that's a perfect example of how when we don't feel like we have the competence to do something, then we'll shy away from doing it. Our confidence just again sinks down to the bottom. All right, so tonight again, we're going to be talking about 3 ways to gain that confidence even when you don't feel very competent. All right, so let's go ahead and get right into it. Because again, we know how we can be in situations where because we don't feel competent, then again, our confidence suffers. And when our confidence suffers, that means sometimes we get stuck or we don't go ahead and step out on faith and do the things that either God has asked us to do or that we feel or we maybe even feel led to do. So, the very first thing you can do in order to feel more confident, even when you don't feel competent, is to leave the qualifying to God. Now, we often feel like if we have not achieved certain things in life, or that we have not done them well enough or are good enough, you know how we are sometimes where we become perfectionists when it comes to our stuff, we start trying to qualify ourselves. But scripture clearly says that we are to leave the qualifying to God. So if you were to look at 2 Corinthians 3 and 5 in the AMP, in the Amplified Version, it says, not that we are sufficiently qualified in ourselves to claim anything as coming from us, but our sufficiency and qualifications come from God. So again, rather than trying to qualify yourself, Leave the qualifying to God, because there are going to be situations where you might not feel like you have a clue about what you're being asked to do or being led to do, but God gives you what you need in order to be qualified to do that. How many of you have ever gotten a job that you really weren't qualified for, but God gave you what you needed in order to get the job done? Or again, maybe you've been asked to do something at church, or again, maybe you've been asked to help somebody or assist somebody and you didn't have a clue how to do it, but God gave you exactly what you needed in order to get it done, right? So again, leave the qualifying to God. Don't worry about trying to qualify yourself. Simply leave that qualifying to God. Okay? All right, so you're ready for the second way that you can feel more confident even when you don't feel competent. You ready? Okay, here we go. All right, the second way that you can feel more confident is that you can believe God's promises, not that voice in your head. How many times, again, have you listened to that voice in your head rather than listening to God, or listening to those positive thoughts in your head? Sometimes, again, it's us that start talking ourselves out of things when we start comparing ourselves to someone else, or we start thinking we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're not pretty enough, we're not accomplished enough. The not enough stuff rises very quickly, again, especially when we don't feel confident. But again, we are to believe God's promises, not the voice in your head. And a perfect example of a promise that God made to Sarah, as mentioned in Hebrews 11, is by faith. Barren Sarah was able to become pregnant because she believed the one who made the promise. Perfect example of that. Remember how Sarah stepped out and did her own thing because she didn't feel like she had the qualifications to have a child at her age, in her 80s and 90s. She felt like she wasn't qualified. She didn't also believe the promise. And so that led her out on a journey. But when the Bible talks about her in Hebrews 11, they talk about the fact that she believed the promise, which is what made her a faith warrior. So I just love it. Again, because by faith, even barren Sarah, and barren means she couldn't have any kids, means that because God had promised it to her, we don't have to worry about what we don't have or what we are lacking. If God has promised us something, then we are to have the confidence that He is going to follow through on His promise. And perhaps maybe we need to read a few more of the promises that God has given us. The Bible is full of them. So when you're feeling like you don't have the confidence, especially because you don't know how to do something, or you feel like it's impossible for you to do something, then look at God's promises for you and see what He has promised you. And then that will help you to gain that confidence. All right. Okay. So the third way that you can feel more confident, even when you don't feel competent, is that, let's go on to number three, by having your very own God resume. Now, we have been talking about a God resume for a while. If you watch the video, a couple of preceding videos, you might know a little bit more about what a God resume is. But just in case you don't, of course, I'm going to remind you, right? So, a God resume. If we think about what a regular resume looks like, a God resume has similar things, including a summary about what God has done in your life. It also will list your gifts and abilities that God has given you, the skills that He's given you, the experiences that He's brought you through, the life's lessons that you learn, and also the blessings that you have received. Once again, a God resume doesn't focus on you, it focuses on God. So, again, when we look at a regular resume, it has the same kinds of things, but so often we might document, we might have a gratitude journal, we might have a prayer journal or something where we are starting to document the things that God has done in our lives. But think about if you have to go through all of those journals. Again, I have about I don't even know how many journals I have. I can probably put my hands on about 10 or 15 completed journals I've done. I have my prayer journals, I have my life journal, and again, journals I hope nobody ever finds, right? Because I'm sharing my real thoughts. But and I have sticky notes. Maybe again, I my a prayer list that I wanted to pray about, and I don't go back and really look at how God has orchestrated things in my life, or how He has made all things work together for my good. So sometimes we have those sticky notes all over the place. Is that you, where you have your sticky notes all over the place? But Scripture clearly reminds us that we are to remember the days of long ago and meditate on all the works and consider what your hands have done. Psalms 143 and 5. So, wouldn't you be ready to have your God resume so that you would be able to feel more confident when you come upon situations where you don't feel confident? Again, all you have to do is have your God resume, and then it's just a short document that lists the accomplishments that have happened in your life because God has orchestrated them, and it helps to tie so many things about your life together. In fact, I've gotten lots of comments that the God resume has been extremely helpful. So, if you want to know how to get your God resume, it's very simple. You go to godresume.live and sign up for the 5-day boot camp, which is totally free, and you do it at your own pace. So you would simply go to www.godresume.live and complete your own God resume. So I have shown you 3 different ways you can feel more confident when you don't feel competent. And if you follow those 3 things, you will begin to have a lot more confidence, not only in yourself, it will improve your self-confidence, but it will also improve what is often called God confidence, so that you can truly again see that God is working all things together for your good, and He's helping you to have that confidence to do exactly what He's created, called, and chosen you to do. So once again, I am Dr. Janice R. Love, also known as the First Lady Coach, and I equip seasoned pastors' wives and Christian women to have that clarity, the confidence, and the courage to walk boldly into the destiny for which she was chosen by being perfectly who God created her to be. So thank you for joining me on today. And always, as always, follow me on YouTube. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. We'll see you soon. Bye bye.